Every year, there comes a moment where we as total Apple fanboys and app developers are waiting and then are excited to see all the cool new stuff Apple announces at their annual Worldwide Developers Conference. And sometimes we get to be here in person.
Oh, yeah.
And we are here in person in San Jose. In fact, we are using Apple's podcasting studio. And all of those new things is what I want to discuss with you, Michael, today on this very podcast.
All right. So, so we're happy that we can actually do it here with professional setting and everything and not in our shabby hotel room.
Yeah.
And as for us as a remote company, it's good that we get to hang out for the whole week. And so I think we should just dive in. But before we do, I want to just, as a follow-up from the last episode, I want to retell quickly my story of my first ever Apple keynote.
Oh, okay.
Because again, we are the total Apple fanboys. And you gave me some tips how to approach the Apple keynote. And you told me that, I should do the lineup at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Before the keynote, which starts at 10 a.m. So think about it, 5 hours before. But because I was jet lagged anyway, and I woke up at 4 a.m. anyway, so it was fine. I decided, I tried to fall asleep after 4 a.m. Didn't work. So I just dressed up, went to stand in line, and, got the whole experience, which was kind of fantastic because in line, of course, there were other geeks. So I got to know lots of people. We got to exchange stories, and I very cool friends from Viacom in Poland. Also cool friends from the Line company in Japan, and friends from Colorado. Really lots of cool developers that I met on my way to the keynote. And then and the cool thing that they did was they just moved us all the time. So there was something happening all the time. So it wasn't like 5 hours in the same place, which was very smart. So because if you feel like you're in motion, although really nothing happens because the keynote won't start before 10 a.m. But anyway, then as we got into the building, they fed us. They gave us some coffee and croissants and stuff and fruit, which was helpful because we were starving by that time. And then when they let us into the hall, to the main keynote area, you gave me a very good pro tip, and I used it to my advantage. So you told me that people are not reasonable with their seating. That people sometimes, do gaps between each other because they just, 2 people sit together, then there's a gap, then 3 people sit together. So I seized this, and I just went straight to the very front.
Yeah.
And then I saw one of the buddies who I was talking to in line before. He was... there was a free spot in the first row.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it taken? No. Good.
Yeah.
So I got the first row experience on WWDC keynote.
There's more than 5,000 people in that room, and you got the first row.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah. So, man, I've watched a lot of keynotes, and I've been here 4 times in person, and I think this is the biggest one since 2014, maybe even bigger. There was so much that was announced, so much that I hoped for. There wasn't really that many things. Well, there was one. They were like a total surprise, but there were many things I hoped for, sometimes for years, and I hoped I would get maybe some of them as a user and as a developer, waiting for features, waiting for APIs. And we got many more than we expected. It might be the biggest one since of the decade, maybe even. So there was a lot. So we'll probably follow up in the future episodes on some of the new Apple stuff that we like. But yeah, let's focus on some of the stuff that we're most excited about.
Okay, so for me personally, of course, the iPadOS.
Yeah.
So finally, my iPad only lifestyle, my iPad only Pro, got the love that it deserves.
Yeah.
It actually got its own OS name. And of course, some people argue it's a marketing gimmick or something, but I think it means commitment. So next year, when there's going to be a WWDC Keynote 2020, and they will have to say what's happened at the iPadOS, what's new for the iPad. So it won't be like a neglected thing that happens by accident in iOS. It will be a fully fledged OS. So I think it's great.
Yeah, and there's so much that they added to iPad to make it better. Like last year, there wasn't much. 2 years ago, it was a big year. But this year might be the biggest year. Like they made so many changes that really makes iPad a far more powerful computer. Like things we've been asking for years. Like some nice things they were like, Apple will never do it because it breaks the whole, it's a simple touchscreen device thing. Like really bring it forward to make it more of a useful computer. Well, still keep it like simple when you don't want to know some of those things. But like, and you can have multiple windows. Well, they don't call it windows, but like multiple windows of the same app. So like when you have a document app, you can have two side by side without like the developer making it from scratch. Like we had side by side Safari, but it's a Safari thing, right?
Exactly.
Now we can do it with any app, and you can easily switch like on the side for the slide over. You can easily switch between multiple apps or multiple windows of the same app. So this is like truly enhances the multitasking workflow. We got
but speaking of that, also I don't know if you noticed, but the same app can be paired with different apps in different split views.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be with the same app all the time.
Exactly.
So it's another thing that you might want to have this app with this, and then also with the other one. So you can switch between these two workflows, and now you can finally.
So finally, it really is like on a quote unquote real computer. Those are windows. Those are not overlapping windows. They don't call it windows aside from developer documentation because it's like simpler, right? It's not non-overlapping, it's easier to deal with, and if you don't want it, it's just like one app full screen. But you really have windows, which is powerful, right?
Yeah,
when you're working with documents, when doing something non-trivial, you don't have to do all sorts of like different weird hacks and like copy things and paste them, use another like weird thing like Gladys to like keep something a little bit. Like you can have things side by side. That's really powerful.
Yeah, and also one of my favorite thing, the keyboard finally can be small.
Yeah,
I mean this is like
the on-screen keyboard.
The on-screen keyboard.
Yeah,
because of course I very often use the smart keyboard folio, so I don't really use the on-screen keyboard. But when I'm browsing, especially vertically, the things on the iPad, I hate this fact that whenever I want to write something, it just pulls out this big gigantic keyboard at the bottom, which is not really comfortable.
Yeah.
But I can have a small keyboard on the side, and just with a thumb, with swipe, I can just type, which is fantastic.
Yeah. The swipe thing is one of the features that, our Android friends will be like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And we've waited for years and finally got it. Like, you can do custom keyboards on iOS, and I tried that because like it seems so much faster, but like just the user experience of custom keyboards is not that great. And like finally, like this is super powerful.
This is a big finally.
But let's stick to iPadOS.
Okay.
And you have more. You have desktop class Safari, which is like this is for real. Like,
yes.
This is a ton of fixes.
Exactly, but it's not just that Safari on iPad says it's a Mac. It's not just it fakes its presence. They had to work on the hovers and everything else. Like they had to really and even Netflix I heard works in Safari.
Yeah.
So you can actually you don't have to have a Netflix app. If you're like you should get a Netflix app, but if you want to just browse something in Netflix, you can log into Netflix on Safari on the iPad and watch it.
You have a download manager in Safari. On the iPad. So it's no longer this thing that, it's supposed to be simple, right? But like, no, I want to save this file somewhere. And oftentimes it's like, you can't, or you have to do like multiple tabs. Now you can have just files you want to download from the web, just save to like any destination you want. And in the Files app is so much more powerful. Like it actually has a column view. Most people won't want to use it, but like if you're a geek and you really want to use iPad as your main computer, this is so like for years I've wanted this.
Yeah.
Right. there's more on both iPadOS and iOS. You have this new context menu thing. Like when you long press on something, there's no longer this this tiny black thing where you can barely fit anything. You actually have a box with names and icons like dropping down from the place where you long pressed. So like it's a small UI thing, but like it's now a system-wide standard UI element. And so when you have like a list of something, like something more powerful where you need to hide a lot of options, you can do that.
Yeah, so the magic of WWDC is that you get to meet lots of cool developers. So I met, for example, Pavel from Riddle, and a very cool company, and they have this application called Documents.
Yeah.
And the only thing I was using the Documents application for was to zip and unzip files.
Yes.
Now I don't have to. Sorry, guys. I can just use the Files app to zip and unzip stuff. So cool.
Yeah. So cool.
And the thumb drive thing also works.
Yeah.
So finally, again, you can just copy files, not just images from the camera. You can just copy files and like a normal person.
And since the iPad Pro actually has USB-C, like, there are so many situations where you need to copy files, and you either can't AirDrop it because it doesn't originate from another Apple computer, and even if you can, like, good luck trying to AirDrop from one device to another, like a 5 GB file, right? There are just like so many situations where if you are a geek, if you are a power iPad user, like actually using it as your main computer or an important computer and not like a toy, right? Like a media consumption device, that is just useful, that despite it, rightly so, not being kind of the first class citizen, because like you should have your stuff in the cloud, it is useful. And now we have it, and we can never again talk about this thing.
Yep. And we have dark mode.
Yeah, whatever.
I like dark mode.
Okay, whatever.
Anyway, so the good thing was that I was procrastinating selling my old iPad Pro 10.5 inch. I actually have I know what I'm going to do with it after WWDC. But before I gave it away, I decided to use it today. So when we are here, we installed the iPadOS 13 on my old iPad Pro, and this way we can really, we could play with it, and we're playing with it. And I'm just repeating to myself, you're not going to install this on the main machine. You're not going to install this on the main machine. So I'll try to resist to beta 2.
I'm giving Michael until Wednesday.
Okay, let's see how this goes.
Right. More comments about iPadOS?
I think we're good.
All right. I really want to talk about shortcuts.
Oh, yeah.
And automation.
Yeah, this got a very big upgrade. I mean, the shortcuts on iOS 13 are going to be magical.
Yeah. So shortcuts, aka workflow, is something we've been using for years, like long before they were acquired by Apple and made like an Apple app.
Yep.
And some of the things they did this year were like things I really hoped would become possible, since now it's an Apple thing. So the app can do things that a third-party app just cannot do. And like from the very beginning, like we were scared that since Apple is acquiring workflow, like maybe it's just an acqui-hire. Then they made an app there and it's like, maybe there's something about it, but like they won't make it that powerful, right? Like Apple doesn't care about power users that much. And so far the trajectory is great. Like they give us with shortcuts so much more than I could have hoped for. And most importantly, those are two features. Feature number one is what it calls automations. So automations are automatic triggers for actions. So you can build your shortcuts, your workflows, right? And you can trigger them. That's fine. But like now you can set an action to be triggered automatically when
something happens.
When something happens.
Or where you get somewhere, or when or something happens.
Yeah. So for example, when a certain time of day or a day of the week, I think, then you trigger an action. When you reach a location, you trigger an action. When you connect to a certain Wi-Fi, so that sometimes may be a more reliable maybe than location when, like, for example, connecting to like work Wi-Fi, right? Then you can trigger something that will, I don't know, do something like change system settings, whatever, right? Or you when you get home, so either by location or Wi-Fi, you turn on do not disturb, right? Or the opposite.
Yeah.
And this is exciting. You can trigger workflows or shortcuts based on NFC tags. So you can buy these NFC tags, just stickers. You stick them somewhere, and when you
Swipe.
When you just approach the sticker with your device, with your iPhone, it triggers something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just so cool. There's so many possibilities for just automating like your specific stuff that there is no one app for that, right? Like because it's just too specific for you. But you put together some of those shortcuts, some apps. You maybe even automate it based on one of those triggers, and it's wonderful. It's glorious. If you're a geek, and it's not that hard. Like there's no programming involved.
Yeah, yesterday when we were listening live to the Connected episode, they mentioned something cool because we just forgot to mention that if you turn on Assistive Touch on the iPad, you can have mouse support.
Mouse support. Can you believe it?
A cursor on an iPad, which is like, what? So you can have that. And with the shortcuts, what you can do is if your iPad connects to your Bluetooth mouse, it can trigger showing the cursor. If you disconnect your mouse, it can shut it down. So it can just turn on or turn off the Assistive Touch. So these kind of examples are just amazing. Yeah,
so we gotta explain that. There is mouse support on iPadOS now, on iOS essentially. But Apple is really, it doesn't want to break the touch screen thing and like make people talk about it too much. So
and
they're really serious, and I understand that. But so they're really serious about making it, it's just an accessibility feature. So, it kind of stays on this big blob when you have this enabled, and you can make it like go away when you disconnect from Bluetooth. But it is super useful. Like if, there's a lot of great things about working with an iPad as your computer.
Yeah.
But if you try to use it as your main machine and work in front of it for 8 hours, that's a problem. That is an ergonomics problem because you have to look down.
Yeah.
So it would be great for like absolute iPad nerds like you to maybe in your office like stick the iPad to like some sort of stand, so it's more on the eye level so that you can look straight ahead. You have your keyboard with iPads, which is already great, and now you can have a mouse for like which works as your virtual kind of
pointing device,
which is like suboptimal. Like it's not built for the mouse, which is good, which is the right thing for this device, but it doesn't mean it's not useful. So even though very few people want to use it, the people who want to use it really want to use it and complain about it for 9 years.
Yeah.
Ever since iPad was released. And I was so incredibly happy that it's there.
Yeah, exactly. So, getting back to shortcuts, there is another thing that they have parameters.
Of course, yes. So last year, they add this thing. So it's kind of confusing because they talk about shortcuts, they talk about Siri shortcuts, and like Apple uses Siri to mean like 10 different things, and they use the word shortcut to mean like 10 different things, and some of those Siri and shortcut things overlap. It's sort of confusing, but this year it's starting to make more sense. So last year, they introduced this feature that you can add Siri shortcuts in your app where you have, for example, you make an order from a restaurant, right? And then your app does what they call donating an intent. So an intent is like a definition of an action. An action could be like ordering from, right? And then you had the parameters like ordering pizza from this joint, right? Mm-hmm. And iOS would see that. Like it will be like shown to the system. So it's connected to the Siri suggestions. Like if you buy pizza from that place every single morning or afternoon, it would suggest to you at that time, maybe on your lock screen, that, hey, you want to do it again. And those things would show up in the Shortcuts app, aka workflow, as a thing you can kind of add to your shortcuts,
Yeah.
right? To trigger this action. Now, see, here's the problem. How often do you buy the same pizza from the same place? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there were certain use cases where this was perfect, but like you could see that they're really going for something far more useful, but they just didn't finish it in time last year, which is you want those intents, those actions to be parameterized.
Yeah.
So there's a general thing of ordering, which is a parameter of what and from where. And now you can actually define it this way in your app. So every triggerable action you define as this intent and the parameters that are possible. And the suggestions, the Siri suggestions still work, but this is extremely powerful with Shortcuts, the Shortcuts app, because now all of those things, without the pizza and that particular place filled in, just with like empty parameters you can fill in yourself, you can take it and plop it into your workflows, your shortcuts, and you can mix and match different apps together. And this is great. Like, we've hacked things like this, us geeks, for years with like URL schemes and different things like that to be able to, for example, add a task to Nozbe with a specific name, specific project and whatnot. And now there's a clean way that's actually simple to use for non-programmers.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of more apps will adopt it, since it's also it's not just a shortcuts thing. It's also connected to Siri, to Siri Kit, the Siri suggestions, the Siri, oh, hey, Siri, do this for me, right? Mm-hmm. So it's connected to many things. So a lot of developers will adopt this API, and for free, you will get it as a power users in the Shortcuts app. This makes a ton more sense than what we saw last year.
Yeah, and then they get rid of it, of this whole thing that they have to have these shortcuts. You know, you have to have just a small list of approved apps that work with shortcuts. Mm-hmm. Like, your app will be able to just, you know, add shortcuts.
Yeah.
To the shortcuts thing. So as long as you have the app download. So yeah, it's perfect. It's and then this being WWDC yesterday. As we were at the Connected episode live recording, we saw the Shortcuts team there, in audience, and you talked to them, and eventually we ended up having burgers with them, and so it's a fantastic team and really, really great people, and wow, again, you get to meet people who are behind things that you use. It's so cool here.
Yeah, and we've also met the crew behind the Automators podcast.
Yeah, exactly. My favorite, David Sparks, Max Sparky. So really, really cool.
Yeah.
And so that's why if you look at my Twitter timeline from this week, lots of selfies with lots of cool people. But again, I'm excited. I get to meet these people behind stuff that I use and love.
Yeah. What else is there? A 6K display.
Yeah, it's always confusing if you talk about the resolution or the price.
Yeah.
I was like, when I saw the introduction about the Mac Pro, which was never a thing I wanted, but then was the display, and I was like, yeah, this is a very nice display, a little bit bigger than my iMac 5K display. Maybe I should get it as a secondary display for my iMac, or maybe for my iPad Pro. The price is 6K. Maybe not. That was my reaction.
Actually, the price is 5K, and the stand is $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the 6K is the price of the matte one.
Yeah. So
anyway, not the display for us. So moving on.
We're not buying the display, and we're not buying the Mac Pro. So. Still, I'm happy Apple makes those things, because even though it's not for me and it's not for a lot of people, it is important for the long-term health of the Mac ecosystem that Apple keeps like high-end professionals very, very happy, and that Macs don't just become, these toys.
Yeah.
Computers for most people who don't have very high-end requirements, but that really like high-end professionals, developers, video professionals, audio professionals, etc., really want to use that, because if they don't and they decide to move to another platform, then
that breaks
the whole ecosystem. Then like people who are really invested in it, like want to spend a lot of money on those computers, especially developers, like they leave and they stop making apps. And hey, I like macOS. I really want to keep using macOS, and for it needs to be great. And so keeping pros happy, I think is really important. Even if, I'm not getting a 6K cheese grater with just 256 gigabytes of SSD.
Yeah, another thing that, just want to say this here. This is kind of nickel diming. I mean, really, $6,000 computer with 256 gigabytes of storage. I don't like this. So this was kind of threw me a bit off. But speaking of macOS, we, as you know, we are working on Nozbe 4.
Yeah.
And in Nozbe 4, we are preparing this fantastic iPhone app. Because we believe the teams that get stuff done should be able to really manage the whole thing on their mobile phone. That's why we designed it mobile first. Yeah. And from there, you managed last week to do a very quick, quickly an iPad app, which I love, and I have it here on my iPad, and it's pretty good for a few hours of work. And now, thanks to /Marzipan /Catalyst. Okay, so Catalyst, this new technology, we will be able to port the iPad app to the Mac and have a native Mac app. Like really, I'm really happy that this investment of Nozbe 4 for iOS, for the iPhone, pays off, in spades to have all three platforms covered.
Yeah, that's one of maybe the most exciting thing, and we knew it was coming, right? Like it was not a secret.
Yeah.
And this is a very big deal. This is one of those big finales that we've known for many years, that the standard, like what we now kind of take for granted as the standard of app development is a little bit broken. Like how crazy is it that you're solving the same thing, the same problems, building those same apps, those same interfaces over and over again.
Yeah.
And just because there are slight differences between, say, a phone and a desktop and a watch, you're starting from scratch. Doesn't make any sense. There always should have been, or maybe not always, but there should have been for quite some time, like a common set of tools, a common framework to accommodate it, right? There are differences, but you can abstract them away, but you shouldn't have to start from scratch every time. And Apple was clearly inching over the years in that direction, like around the user interface problem, like with all of the other frameworks, right? And so that was great, but there was this last massive bit missing. And I hoped for years that they will do it. It was just a question of when. Like it always was obvious that this is the way to go. And amazingly, they've showed us not one, but two of those things. The short-term future of macOS development and the long-term future of development for all of Apple's platforms. The first one is Marzipan, aka Catalyst, aka UIKit for Mac. So you just take the iPad app, run it on macOS. It almost always is just like you check a box and it runs. And it's not yet great, but it works.
Yeah, but you can make it a really great Mac app with some additional work. So today I was on the labs for that, and it's really easy to add menu bars, to add toolbars, to really and connect them with your app. So and again, what they told me is that many things that we support on the iPad, for example, if we support on the iPad the Spotlight search, we will have Spotlight search on the Mac.
Yeah.
Just like that. If we support the new iPadOS windowing, split view and everything, we will have multiple windows on the Mac. So it's all like they really made sure that you can invest your time in a good iPad app and then later tweak it for the Mac. But it's going to be just tweaks, not rewriting things from scratch, which is the most annoying thing ever because you've solved the problem before. Why do you have to solve it again?
Yeah.
And then there's a second one.
Yeah, and there's a second one. And that I also have been waiting for years. But that one did not leak. That one I did not expect to come out this year. And that is what Apple calls SwiftUI. It's a completely new framework for building user interfaces. that works across the whole spectrum. So not just iPhone and iPad, not just iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, but watchOS 2, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere. Like they did. Again, I had my first State of the Union. So it's like the State of the Union is the second keynote. After keynote is more technical. I got to stay there, and they demoed it. It's really that what they're aspiring to do is really like you write this declarative, very nice SwiftUI code, and it just works on all the platforms. It's fantastic, and this is the future of WatchKit. So there is no more WatchKit. This is the way to design watch apps.
Yeah. So the general idea is like this. Traditionally, the way you build interfaces is we programmers call it the imperative paradigm, and you essentially tell the computer step by step what to do, like how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, create this view, this box. Oh, set the background color to this. Set the frame, the position to this, and the width and height to this. And when you open the view, do this. When you want to change the view, do this. When you exit the view, do this. There's a lot of repetitiveness in it, and there's a lot of space for mistakes, just for stupid bugs. And mostly, it's just tiring. It's a lot of work, like very repetitive work, but work that's not that easy to abstract away. It's not like it's repetitive in a way that a developer can easily like make it less of a nuisance. Like it is a nuisance all around. And with a declarative, reactive approach, you just specify what there is, like what the interface should look like what's its structure and what's its data. And you just say what the user interface is based on the input, the data that you want to show on the screen. Mm-hmm. And the first pass, like displaying it for the first time. The second pass is when the information changes, what exactly you need to do to update the screen, or when you exit, what you need to do. Like all of that is an implementation detail of the framework. You don't have to worry about it. It's kind of difficult to explain to non-programmers, but the end result is immediately understandable to non-programmers. You show a slide, a big scrolling slide of what it takes to build like a list view with like different items and like an image and a title, subtitle, and you do something when you tap on it on iOS using UIKit, and then what it's like using SwiftUI. And even though you're not a programmer, you don't know what it means. Like you look at the one and it's like black magic. You look at the other, it's like, oh, okay, it says view, and then it kind of goes inside and it says image, and it goes inside and it like says H-stack. What's H-stack? Maybe horizontal. So you see image on one side and then you see like text on the other, and you say on tap and there's something. Like it's kind of, you just kind of say what you want there to be, right? It's huge. It's a huge thing, and it's a long-term thing.
Yeah, what I like about this is that, first of all, of course, you save lines of code, which means, fewer lines of code is not just this pipe dream. It's the question that when you have, fewer lines of code, you just make fewer mistakes, as you mentioned. But second thing, the code is more readable, which is always a problem. Like, you have one developer on this code, and then you have another one. They have to really spend time, going through the code. So they did it like this, and they did it like that, and it is like this.
Yeah.
And then in this case, it's just you just go there and you just read the code, and you're like, okay, I get it. This is the view. This is the thing. This is the image. This is what happens. All right. It's almost like you're telling the story.
Yeah.
So like the code is more like a prose, right?
Yeah. This is what we've been doing for years already. Mm-hmm. Like this paradigm, this programming paradigm, this way of building user interfaces was more or less, I'm not sure if invented or pioneered, but surely popularized by Facebook's React framework for building web applications. And we've been using that for years. And they did this React Native thing, which we're also deeply familiar with. And now Apple is doing it, even Google is doing it. And like in programming, there's this phrase, there's no silver bullet, right?
Yeah.
There's no one thing that magically makes programming simple. But like this declarative, reactive, component-based programming paradigm with React, and with like React on the web is like one of the maybe the biggest story of programming in the last 5 to 10 years. Like it's the biggest like revolution in terms of how simple it makes what used to be hard. Like how much easier and faster you can make something. How you can iterate more quickly, more easily.
Yeah, and for me, my eldest daughter Milena she's 10 years old, and she's been already playing with Swift playgrounds, and I want her to learn to code. And I think if she learns to code SwiftUI, if she learns to code something like this, declarative paradigm, it will be so much easier for her to understand it, to iterate on it, to just play with it. It's going to be more playful for her. So and not just her. I mean, any children. Because I always we both believe this thing that programming, even if you don't want to be a programmer, it's good to understand programming because it's so much logic. It's so much fun also to build stuff out of nothing. And I want her to have this joy. And I think with this new paradigm, it's just going to be so much easier for her.
Yeah. For us and for many people, it's not going to be relevant to our work for years or most of our work. It's a new thing. It's a very new thing. And it will take years for it to become good and fully featured. And there's many things you can't do with it yet. And it might have bugs. And you need to be on the newest OS to use it. So it will take a while for many companies to be able to make that jump. But, like this, there is something exciting with SwiftUI that we will be able to do, maybe.
You mean the watch?
I mean the watch.
Exactly. So there's a story in our company that I use the watch. You don't. I use the watch. You used to use the watch. And I've been asking you several times over for some new features to our app. And every time you would say, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not touching that. Michael, we have different priorities in our company. This is just too much work. It's too, I don't like doing this, and I shouldn't be focused on that because I should, I have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
And you were right. That's why I wouldn't push. But I was kind of, not really happy. Now I can change the narrative.
Yeah.
I can say, Radek, how about playing a little bit with SwiftUI for the watch? Maybe by playing with SwiftUI, you could add me this feature or the other feature, and this would change the whole thing because you will take it as a way of playing with the new toy instead of begrudgingly do something that you don't want to do.
Yeah, there's no promises.
Yeah.
Okay, but I would really love to play with SwiftUI.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect avenue because our technology stack for Nose Before is not quite compatible with SwiftUI, at least in the short-term future. But the watch app is something like completely different. Like you have to like build it from scratch, more or less. There's not that much you can share. In our instance, at least. So,
and we also don't mind our customers to use the latest watch OS. It's fine.
Yeah, especially for Nose Before, like since it will be a new app, like adding watch OS support, like it will only support the latest OS, right?
Exactly.
Anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. So it would be the perfect avenue for me to play with SwiftUI. So you might see that later this year.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. Yeah. So both of these things are a very big deal. And I'm very much hoping that Apple will do the work in the like every year to push that forward. Both of these technologies, like SwiftUI is Apple's long-term bet in the future. Like it's the shared UI framework for all the platforms, but it will take many years to like fully overtake UIKit and AppKit. Catalyst / Marzipan. Marzipan is such a good name.
Yeah,
Marzipan.
I love Marzipan.
Yeah. Marzipan is like the next 5 years of macOS development that you can, port an iOS iPad app to the Mac. That's a big deal, but there's a lot of work there. There are still very big and important limitations to what you can't do by just porting an iPad app to macOS.
Yeah, but I think for us, especially with Nozbe 4, the calendar is just aligning perfectly.
Yes,
because
I agree.
We just have that. This is the year where we are launching Nozbe 4, and we will get to have these apps because it's timed perfectly with what Apple is doing. So this is one of the exciting parts, again, of running Nozbe and of working here. I think we get to really live on this cutting edge, that our technology has to align with, Apple's technology to really work.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, that's the thing. And that's why I'm hoping it will continue to be better, right? That we will be able to like fully 100%, not like 95%, but like 100% take advantage of Mac's capabilities when we need to make the best possible app for the Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's still like so much great stuff to be done, but wow, like SwiftUI is so powerful and such a great path for the future that I've hoped for, and Marzipan Catalyst will really rejuvenate the Mac experience, because there will be a ton of apps that never existed on the Mac or were like really neglected on the Mac. They will come to the Mac because it won't be that much effort for developers to just take the app on the iPad that they already have and put it on the Mac. And here's an argument you will be excited about. I think it will make many companies more interested to build powerful apps for the iPad.
Yes,
because,
exactly.
Here's the thing. This hardware,
this
is
amazing
so powerful.
iPad Pro is so strong, so powerful.
It's faster than this thing. It's faster than my 15-inch 3-year-old MacBook Pro.
Mine is smaller, but it's better.
Yeah, and it has LTE. It has all these great features. It was iOS and apps holding back iPad. iOS, now iPadOS, made a huge leap this year. And I hope it will keep coming, right? Like, there's still more that we want, but this is a huge year. And with apps, again, we have more capabilities, we have more power, more hardware.
You're
and
completely
now,
right, yeah.
if you tell developers, hey, build a great iPad app, and you'll have the Mac app for free, well, almost for free.
Yeah, you get the two for one deal.
Yeah. Then, like, a lot of companies will be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't think of the iPad just as a toy. Like, let's do that. Let's go for it.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think about this narrative. You're right.
Yeah.
Like many iOS developers who are doing the iPhone, they would say, I don't need the iPad app. Like hardly anyone will use it. But as you said, if they get two for the price of one, it's not that much of an effort anymore. Like this is something worth doing, because then their app can appear on the Mac App Store. They can get additional revenue, additional sales, and reach additional markets.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So, we're running out of time slowly. I wanted to just share some of my WWDC experience.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So it's my first time here inside the WWDC. You are a long-time experienced guy, so so you know this stuff, but you know the drill. I had to get the hang of it. What to do and how to use it. And yesterday I think I cracked it. Yesterday I started going to the labs early in the morning to talk to Apple engineers, and then I realized the cool thing about this: you not only get to talk to Apple engineers, to really Apple people who are behind stuff, but you also get to talk to other developers who are interested in the same thing. So finally, suddenly, I was in this lab about expanding to China and to Taiwan. I met, the chief of App Store of Taiwan. Like I normally would never meet her in person, and now I could talk to her and exchange ideas, and it was great. But then I talked to Pavel from Riddle, which is a great software house in Ukraine. And we talked about their apps. We both talked about how we can, what we can both do, to expand in China. And then he told me that the Bear app developers are here and they talk about and they are successful in China. So and then I saw them on social media where they are. So I went to see them. We talked about, my Siri Shortcuts that I use for journaling. We'll link in the show notes for Bear. And then they told me what they're up to with the Bear app, and we exchanged ideas. So it's this magic of really just people hanging out here. Like we just mentioned the burgers with the Shortcuts guys, David Sparks. I just talked to Rainer Ricci, just casually about the iPadOS, because he was here. Everything, like this is the place to be. Now I get it. Now I get it. And if you really are here and you really participate actively, like you go to labs, you go to sessions. Actually, labs are better because when you go to labs, you talk to everyone and then you meet other developers. And what in the very beginning is kind of awkward is you just start talking to people just randomly. Yeah. But on the other hand, people know that this is what they came here for. So you make their life easier because they know that they should also be talking to you. Yeah. But maybe they didn't. They were a bit shy. But the moment you start talking, it's not awkward. They know that this is what we're here for. We should be talking to each other. So it's in the beginning it gets a little bit awkward, but then once you get the hang of it, you just start talking to people just casually, and you eat lunches together, you have coffees together, and I love it. And this fact that really today I had a very, very meaningful conversation with one Apple person from the App Store team, from editorial team, to understand how they put things on the Today tab and on the App Store. And again, these conversations don't happen. Like normally, you don't have access to these people at all. Yeah. And suddenly they're there hanging out, and we started talking about the editorial thing, and then we started talking about remote working, and he was interested. And he's not only an Apple engineer or an Apple employee. He's also like a person, interested in stuff. So he was interested in our how we do remote working. So I just I showed him the how we run the company, how we do our reunions. Like we had everybody was gone. Like the lab was over, and we were just sitting there and just chatting about this casually. And then when we finished, we were just like hey, bye, and that was it. But it was just fantastic, phenomenal. I loved it. It's this whole conference is a big effort. For both of us. We have to pay lots of money to get here for the tickets, for the plane tickets, for the lodging and everything. It's more than a week away from work. Yeah. And from the families. So it's a big, meaningful, kind of sacrifice in this sense. But on the other hand, that's why when you're here, you just make the most of it. Yeah. Because otherwise, if you just go to labs, if you just go to sessions to see sessions, no, don't do that because sessions are recorded. Yeah.
When you're a first timer on WWDC and you don't get any advice, and you're a developer, what do? You go to sessions, which are talks, right? And you have people talk for an hour about technology. And this is really a total waste of time and money.
Yes.
Don't do that. Don't go to sessions at all, or go only to the sessions you need that are most relevant so that you can catch the person speaking or just so you have enough experience to be able to ask meaningful questions on the labs.
Exactly.
But it doesn't make any sense to spend thousands of dollars to come here to watch in person in a hall a talk that you can get the same day for free on the internet.
Yeah,
makes no sense. But this conference here in San Jose every year is the place to be if you're an app developer in the Apple ecosystem, or maybe even not a programmer, but you're very deeply involved and your livelihood is kind of in this ecosystem, right? There's a lot of bloggers here, right?
Exactly.
Then it is the place to be because everyone is here and you can catch people, have access to people that you just cannot catch in any other way.
Yeah, and again, for me as a business, I'm right now the business person, but I am a geek and technology geek, so I know what people are talking about. And the cool thing, for example, yesterday I went to the design labs. Yeah. Again, I'm not the designer. We have two great designers, a lot better than me, but at least I'm here so I can ask for some meaningful questions and feedback to the Apple designers. I can show them, the notes before that we have. And yesterday I had really very good sessions on that. And this way I can just take notes, give it to our designers, and they can just, work with that. Because, what I can do is ask questions and show them the app, and then, they'll take it from here. And as we know, if we get good UI design ideas from the people, from Apple, then we know that our app is, the first-class citizen on the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah. I think that's a wrap.
I think so. To finish it off, I would like to thank Apple for providing us with this studio. And I would like to also thank our friend of the show, Marcin, for helping us out here. And anyway, I would like to thank you for being my wingman and for coming here and for for doing the WWDC experience, because I think together we make a great team to make the most of it.
Yeah. All right. See you next week.
If we manage to record.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, see you in 2 weeks then.
I think see you in 2 weeks, because next week you're staying here and then you're coming later.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so see you in 2 weeks. And today we have the bash, the famous bash with Weezer. So we'll see how this goes. Anyway, the party on Thursday, and tomorrow I'm flying out.
All right.
Okay. And you're going somewhere.
Oh, yeah. After the conference, I'm going to Yosemite with my friends for like a day and a half.
Nice.
Yeah. To do some hiking and then go back to San Francisco to chill with friends.
Yeah, about that, just as the last PS of the show, today we were at the Dub Run. So we got to run in the morning with fellow developers. Again, a great idea by Curtis. Very cool time.
Yeah.
So we got to run and it was fun.
It was more fun for you than for me. My knees and ankles did not want to cooperate. They're like, no, you're not running today. So I survived, but I'll go light on myself.
Yeah, but it would be great. Yeah, you should get back to running a little bit more often then.
I know.
What you do. Okay.
All right.
That's a wrap.